We just wait just like 3 minutes. Yeah.
No rush time.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not quite at 7.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no rushes yet.
Hey, welcome everyone. We'll get started in about 5 minutes, so if you just checked in, there's food and drinks upstairs. Otherwise, grab a seat and we'll get started soon. Thanks.
If it looks better on video.
Well, welcome everyone. Glad you guys made it out to Meteor HQ tonight. My name is Mark Trang. I run marketing and business development here at MDG, and look forward to an awesome set of talks. We usually do a few featured talks and a few demos, but tonight we're bringing you 5 featured talks and 1 demo. And tonight is like the frequent flyer edition of Meteor Night because almost every single speaker except one, Sashko, is not from here. They actually got on a plane and flew to San Francisco to be here tonight. So get ready for talks from multiple continents, including Europe, Australia, the other side of the U.S. Yeah, South Carolina and New York count. Come on. So it's a great lineup, and we'll dive into all sorts of different updates around Meteor as well as Apollo, best practices as usual, and cap off with an awesome demo by our friends from Paris, France. So if you're joining online at livestream.meteor.com, go ahead and click the live button in order to sync up the feed. You'll notice we're probably about 20 seconds behind here from San Francisco. And then if you want to submit questions from the live feed, you can either do it in line in the comments or tweet us at MeteorJS, and then just use the Meteor Night hashtag, and we'll keep an eye out for those. And then if those questions come up, we'll feed them to the speakers at the end of every segment. And with that, our first speaker tonight is a longtime Meteor Night favorite, Ben Newman, who's the technical lead for the Meteor framework from Meteor Development Group, who happens to be in town from Brooklyn, not New York, Brooklyn, New York. Ben will be speaking about upgrading to the latest version of Node, why should you do it now, and how to do it. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks. Thanks for coming out. It's good to see some familiar faces and some new people. I'm Ben, Benjamin without the I on most kinds of social media. I've been at Meteor like a year and a half now, and the whole time I've been working remotely from New York, and that works really well. It's not the first company I've worked remotely for, so I know that when I say it works well here, it actually does work. My entire team is completely distributed. I've got someone who lives in Australia who's going to be talking tonight. Tom Zoll lives here in San Francisco. I'm in New York. Before that, we had someone who lived in Israel and someone who lived in Amsterdam. So that's one nice thing about working remotely is that everyone else is doing it too. As Mark mentioned, I work on the Meteor framework. I'm the tech lead for that, and we recently hit the milestone of shipping version 1.3 of Meteor, as you have probably heard, which included a module system and lots of other improvements around testing. When that shipped, my small contribution to the marketing effort was this tweet. And I decided to call out a pair of sort of lesser known and likely to be overlooked features from the release. These are by no means the banner features, but I really do mean it when I say that Meteor Node and Meteor NPM, which you may or may not have heard of, are a couple of my favorite parts of the release. So I wanted to spend a moment just explaining how that works. The background is that since its beginnings, Meteor has shipped with a version of Node, the JavaScript runtime. And that's strange compared to most of the rest of the JavaScript ecosystem, because you're usually supposed to bring your own version of Node, and hopefully the packages that you're using are all compatible with it. And it's your problem if they're not. So let's see, I can make this a little bigger. Everyone see that? It says Meteor. Yeah? OK, so node is a command that puts you into a REPL, as you know. Meteor node is no different. In fact, yeah, it's in my history. Great. So on the face of it, that's not much different. Maybe a little worse because you have to type Meteor 2 in addition to Node. But the benefit of it is that you know that whenever you type Meteor Node, you're always using the version of Node that is coming with Meteor instead of a version of Node that might be installed elsewhere on your system. And to go along with that, we have Meteor NPM. Meteor NPM version will spit out a little JSON blob of all the versions of all the things that matter about your development environment. So you can see here that it's using the 5.11.0 version of Node, which has not yet been released. That's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. It's using a more recent version of the V8 embedding API than actually ships with Meteor right now. But that's all in agreement with what Meteor Node would give you. So if you've ever been working with a Meteor app and needed to use Node or NPM, this is just an easy way of doing that, right? But this one small feature got me thinking, what the future of Meteor, where potentially there are different versions of Node in play, might look like. And reminded me that this thread, some of you may have seen, a very long, very active thread on the Meteor repository, all about upgrading Node. This is a popular thread by the standards of the Meteor repository. It's popular by almost any standard. There's so many messages. It's even gotten to the point where someone who doesn't work for Meteor commented scolding other people for just commenting with +1 comments. asking them to make substantive remarks instead. I don't feel the same way. The plus ones are great. It's nice to know that people care about this, even if they have nothing to add. Speaking of people who have something to add and then some, perhaps my favorite comment on this thread is from Nathan Muir, who went to the trouble of trying to upgrade the version of Node that Meteor uses himself and cataloged every roadblock that he ran into. The list of things here is encouragingly short, but these are all still would be stumbling blocks if you were going to attempt this on your own. Credit also goes, I think, to this Luke Adams person who used a more recent version of Node 5. Nathan used 4. And managed to generate the dev bundle, which is a bundle of all the things that we ship with Meteor using that version of Node, and got an app to run, and noted that there were some problems with the Meteor promise implementation. So this kind of contribution to a thread like this, that's full of people who are just really enthusiastic, but not a whole lot of actual progress is really nice to see. And so once I got a break from the 1.3 release process, I decided to go ahead and make a couple pull requests. And I'll get to that in a second. But I want to spend a second explaining what it is that Luke Adams did here. So when you run Meteor, you probably are running it from, that's me, that's weird. You're probably running it from a version of Meteor that was installed using curl, right? Or maybe you're on Windows and you used the Windows installer. Well, there's another way to run Meteor, which is to clone the repository. And then, if necessary, generate your own dev bundle. And then run Meteor using the Meteor script that's in the root of the repository, using a relative path rather than just the word Meteor on the command line. And you'll find that experience is very similar to using Meteor from a released version, but it allows you to much more easily make changes to the implementation of the command line tool and test them out quickly. So this generate dev bundle script looks like this. Oh, wow, that definitely needs to be a bit bigger. Right, and it's doing things like downloading Node and Mongo, and then npm installing a bunch of things, and then at the very bottom, tarring it all up into a bundle that can be stored on S3 so that other people don't have to build the dev bundle. They can just download it and extract it in place. So what does that look like? Well, I already have a dev bundle here in my checkout. That's what the contents look like. The dev bundle Ben node is the same as Meteor node. But I'm going to delete that now. So I hope this next step works. I'm going to regenerate the dev bundle. And on my machine, this takes like 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm just going to let it go. It downloaded Node. Now it's downloading Mongo. And it's off to the races. So let's get back to the presentation. And oof. Is that readable? OK. So the other day, when I got sick and tired of us not having an answer to this very long GitHub issue thread about upgrading Node, I went ahead and pushed some work-in-progress changes that I made to enable using different versions of Node. And I wasn't entirely sure whether that was going to mean upgrading to Node 4 or Node 5 or Node 6. So I published 3 different pull requests. Now, technically, we can't merge all 3 of these because which version of Node would we be using then? And so that's not the goal. The goal would be to hopefully identify one of these as the best choice. And my hope, honestly, is that it is Node 6. Now, that said, Node 6 was released 2 days ago, right? So there just hasn't been much time for NPM packages that don't quite work with it, like SQLite 3, to update. But that's a problem that the entire community is facing right now. So I'm pretty confident that, give it a week or 2 weeks, those people will have fixed their packages, and Node 6 will be about as stable as Node 5, and it'll be a much easier decision which of those versions we want to upgrade to. Right, so here's a graphical representation of the plan that the Node.js Foundation has for its LTS, or long-term support releases, and its simultaneous current releases. So you can see that since October 2015, Node 4 has been in this blue region, actively supported in a long-term way, and it's going to continue to be supported until April 2017. So it's not crazy to contemplate upgrading to Node 4. But when there are 2 newer versions of Node out there, that would seem like not quite catching up to the times, I think. On the other hand, Node 5, and this is by design, the odd versions of Node are typically experimental, and the even ones are meant to be long-term supported. So Node 5 has only been available since October 2015, and it's not even any longer the current version. Node 6 has taken over that, and Node 5 doesn't have a future after somewhere between April and October of this year. So upgrading to Node 5 is probably not realistic. So while Node 6 is pretty new and isn't going to actually be under long-term support until October, there's going to be a really long period in which that is the most stable and well-supported version of Node through April 2018 at least, at which point we'll probably switch to Node 8. So my money is on Node 6, but I've gotten Meteor to work using Node 4 and Node 5 so far, and not Node 6. So that's the truth of the matter. Great. So if we check on our dev bundle, great. I can see that it finished successfully, and indeed, if I run a command like meteor help, which doesn't really do anything, but it does require a dev bundle, you can see that it's going to go. Usually it would go download the dev bundle, but here it found the dev bundle sitting there since we just built it and went ahead and extracted it. And so you can see that Meteor node works same as it used to. Okay. Right, so that's promising. At least we can run Meteor using a more recent version of Node, and we can even create apps with it and run those apps, which to me was a huge relief when I first got to this point, because it meant that there were no immediate showstoppers preventing this from succeeding. And the fact that Node 5 worked just about as well as Node 4 was also really encouraging. So all of this build process is running in Node 5, right? So that's tons and tons of code in the Meteor code base that's running with really no problem at all. And indeed, the app loads. How would I prove this to you? Do you know about Meteor Shell? It's pretty cool. It's a Node client that connects to your running app, so you can see things like is server true. Cool. So that's all working, and that's hugely encouraging for me. But there's still a lot of work to do. And this is part of the reason that I opened those pull requests, because my hope is that as people try out the pull requests, check out the branches, build their own dev bundles, and try to use that to experiment with building apps, they will run into problems that are due to the upgrade and report them as issues or submit pull requests against those branches. There's a fairly exhaustive list of notable changes just between 5 and 6, and likewise between 4 and 5. And, well, does anyone know what version of Node Meteor uses right now? What we ship with? Yeah, 0.10.43. So there's been a 0.11, a 0.12, a couple versions of IO.js before the heroic merger of IO.js and Node, and then there was a 4, 5, and 6 version of that. So we're a couple of major versions behind, to say the least. And I'm not proud of that, but this is the plan to fix it. So, to some extent, this work will involve looking at this list and auditing the Meteor code base and making sure that, if we use buffer.prototype.lastIndexOf, we're using it correctly in the new style. But just as an existence proof, being able to create an app and run it using Node 5 suggests that not all of these are immediately blockers. And we've already started doing some of the work to address these things. I'm the person in the yellow shirt here. These are commits on a branch called WIP for work in progress -upgrade -node. And I'm going to highlight a couple of them that I think are interesting. So the first idea that I would like to dispel, Meteor uses a library called Node Fibers, and this enables coroutines, which are a really powerful language abstraction for Node. And that's been sort of a weird Meteor thing for a long time, but it serves us well. And since it is a native module that needs to be recompiled against each new version of Node, you might worry that new versions of Node would just do something that breaks compatibility with fibers, and Meteor would have to find a totally different solution for that use case. But in fact, upgrading to Node 5 meant that we were able to get rid of our Windows fork of fibers and upgrade to the same version of fibers, 1.0.10, on all platforms. So this was actually just an unqualified success. Fibers compile just fine against all the major versions of Node, and so we're going to keep using them. That's a relief. Another thing we're doing now, that we're able to do now, is download Node binaries directly from npmjs.org instead of pre-built binaries that we built and stored on Amazon S3. So that cleans up the generate dev bundle script quite a bit. Luke Adams pointed out a promise with the Meteor promise, a problem with the Meteor promise package, and I fixed that. And this one is really interesting. So there are a lot of packages on our package system atmosphere, and only a minority of them have binary npm dependencies. But the ones that do have binary dependencies face a real problem as we upgrade Node, because we've been asking Meteor package authors to run publish for Arch on 3 different architectures, or 4 different architectures: Mac 64-bit, Linux 32 and 64-bit, and Windows 32-bit. But the sort of dark secret is that each of those architectures is only Node 0.10, right? So all that code in Atmosphere is not compiled for newer versions of Node, right? So we could either ask Meteor package authors to go and run publish for Arch, not only on those 4 platforms, but across several versions of Node, or we could push a little bit of the compilation effort onto the person doing the installing, right? So this is a step away from the Meteor philosophy of making things as easy as possible for the end user developer. But we're still in a position, I think, to make this somewhat increased level of effort pretty manageable. So how are we going to do that? Let me first show you what this means. So if I add an Atmosphere package like npm bcrypt, or actually a better example is accounts password, which depends on npm bcrypt, then you'll see it download. Oh no. Okay. There's a known problem.
Casper, singular. password.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. All right, so you may have seen it download npm bcrypt there. And now what you're seeing, or what you saw up there with the CXX and the where did it go? OK. Anyway, it recompiled it just after we added that package to the app. And I actually turned on the output. It normally only shows you the output if it fails. So normally it would be totally invisible that that was happening behind the scenes. So that's pretty cool. What it means is that you potentially don't even have to publish on different architectures as a Meteor package author. You can just rely on people adding the package to their app to do the recompilation with whatever version of Node they want to use and whatever platform they're on. So if that works, if the hunch that it's not too much to ask people to compile packages when they download them, which is the name of the game in the larger NPM world, for what it's worth, then we'll be in a great position when it comes to using Meteor on not just the leading platforms like Linux, Mac, and Windows, but say Raspberry Pis, ARM, other ARM platforms, any version of Node. I don't know. If that excites you, then I'm glad it excites me. I would love to be able to run Meteor on a Raspberry Pi. OK, so how does this work? Well, thankfully, most NPM packages that have binary dependencies use a tool called NodeJip, which is a nice way of interacting with the V8 embedding API. And NodeJip is great when you get it fully set up. But the installation is actually pretty annoying relative to what Meteor users may expect. So at the very least, on every platform, you need a version of Python installed, 2.7, definitely not version 3. You need a compiler tool chain. You need the make command on Mac. You need the Xcode command line tools. And on Windows, depending on which version of Windows you have, you need to install either Visual Studio Express or Visual Studio Community Edition, and you need to make sure that NPM knows both where your Python installation is and what version of that compiler toolchain you're using. And of course, the errors that you get when you don't do those things right in no way lead you to these instructions. So it's just not a very friendly experience, right? So what can we do about that? Well, I showed you that we build this thing called the dev bundle and ship it to every Meteor developer when they run Meteor the first time. So we can do crazy things, like include a minimal Python installation in the Windows dev bundle, where it's particularly hard to install the right version of Python. And while it might seem insane to include 20 megabytes worth of Python, the dev bundle is already 60 or 70 megabytes to download. So, you know, that's not exactly a drop in the bucket, but if it saves you the headaches of dealing with those configuration problems, then it's probably worth it. Another thing that we can do, since we now have these Meteor npm and Meteor node commands, is just make sure that environment variables like the all caps Python and JIP MSVS version are set appropriately. And so to a large extent, you will never have to think about that. And so, you know, those are just two little paper cuts that, you know, probably would have lost you a couple of hours apiece if you didn't have the appropriate context for, you know, what was going wrong with your app. And we're able, with this integrated solution that we call Meteor, to kind of just make all those things work. You still do have to install a compiler toolchain, but we can also give you the latest versions of NodeJip and this other really cool tool that I hope everyone starts using, Node pre-JIP, which is like NodeJip, except that it allows the npm package author to build and pre-publish versions of their package on lots of different platforms with different versions of Node, so that if you install a package that depends on one of these packages, then as long as it's something that the package author anticipated, you will not actually have to have a compiler toolchain. It'll just download it from Amazon S3. So a good example of a package that does this is this Zopfli package. Zopfli is Google's new compression algorithm. And the way that it accomplishes this, in a nutshell, is that it has an install hook that calls node prejip install with fallback to build. So it still works as long as you have a compiler toolchain, even if your particular configuration has not been pre-built. So a world in which we get everyone to use node prejip is a world in which the last of the major annoyances in getting this story to work just goes away. And then it stops mattering which version of Node you're using, what platform you're on, as long as either Node prejip works or you're able to compile on your own machine. OK, so that brings us back to these 3 pull requests. One to upgrade to Node 4, competing with another one to upgrade to Node 5, and another to upgrade to Node 6. And I think, based on what I said earlier, there is some chance that Node 4 will be something that we support in addition to Node 6. But there's very little chance that Node 5 is going to be worth anyone's time. So I'm going to go ahead and preemptively close this pull request. There, I did it live. You can refer to the LTS schedule if you want to know why I did that. All right, let me go back to my presentation. I have one more slide here, which is just that.
Closing PR lives on Meteor Night. That's how we roll. Any questions for Ben? Rare chance to ask the Brooklyn boy who's in town. No questions?
Out of curiosity, why bother with Node 4? I mean, why increase the noise of questions and potential problems? Why not just buy the full Node 6 or keep?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's going to depend on. Oh yeah, OK. So the question is, why even bother with Node 4? Like, why not just shoot for the moon? And that's really tempting. Node 6 is going to see the most active development. People are going to care the most about their packages working well with it. Another great thing about it is that it supports something like 93% of the ECMAScript 6 standard. So all this effort that we've been doing to compile your code with Babel so that it will run in Node and in the browser, we'll only have to do that for the browser at that point. And that'd be really cool. That would be half the headache for me. But I think it ultimately depends on Meteor users' appetite for risk. And if it helps you sell the idea of using Meteor to your boss, that it's possible to use a version of Node that's been out in the wild for a long time, then that's a pretty good reason for making it available. Now, my hope is that anything we do to better support Node 4 will also help us better support Node 6, right? So I think the efforts will be cumulative for, at least that's my hope. If it's too divergent, if it's just like supporting 0, 10, and 6, then maybe it won't be worth it. So that's the rationale. Yeah?
Could you explain again why you're including an embedded Python installation?
Yeah, I wish this wasn't the case, but NodeJip, that tool that helps you build native modules, is written in Python. It's like a tool for JavaScript. It's used widely by literally every binary NPM package, and yet it's written in Python. And I would understand if it was, say, written in C++, because that's what V8 is written in. But really strange that it's written in Python. I guess chalk it up to someone just being much more familiar with Python than. I mean, that's not true. Nate is not more familiar with Python than he is with JavaScript. So I don't really have an explanation for that.
Pre-existing system that exists.
Yeah?
JIP exists.
Oh, okay. So Node JIP is like a port of JIP to Node. Okay.
Or wrapper.
There you go. Yeah. So as long as that's the case, you need to have Python, and maybe it's not too much to ask people to install their own version of Python, but that's you're trying to write JavaScript if you're using Meteor, so that seems like sort of a strange ask. Yeah.
Here, take this.
Hey, my question is this on? It's probably on. What benefits do I get as a developer from upgrading to Node 6 at all? Like, I've been using Meteor with Node 0.10, and like, no bad things have happened. Other than you not having to transpile stuff, what do I actually get out of it?
Right, I guess I did spin that as a benefit to like me personally and not to Meteor users. So, I mean, the most recent versions of Node are where all of the effort is being focused on performance and security and compatibility with NPM and other systems. Although Node 0.10 was and is long-term supported, that long-term is coming to an end. So it will, in October, enter maintenance mode, at which point they won't be doing anything other than security fixes for it. And that's not a situation that we want to be in or that we want Meteor developers to be in. So it's actually pretty important that Meteor not be using an ancient version of Node. But day to day, what it will mean is that rebuild times will be faster because we're doing less compilation and the underlying engine is just faster. The debugging experience will be better because more things will be natively supported, like classes and modules. And so I think it'll be, pretty sure it'll be a strictly better experience any way you cut it.
And we got a couple questions from Twitter. So Martin asked, will packages need to be pre-compiled for Linux if developing on Mac when running Meteor build, for example, Phantom.js?
Right. So there's sort of two sides to this coin. There's Meteor add or Meteor npm install, where you're downloading a package and might need to recompile it for your platform in order to get it to work. The other side of the coin is when you're deploying an app. When you run Meteor build or Meteor deploy, we do a similar thing, where on the target architecture, when you deploy before you're about to run your app, say it's on Galaxy, we run the same npm rebuild command for any binary dependencies. So it's pretty seamless. And whereas you used to have to sort of cross-compile if you were deploying to a different architecture, now you basically don't have to think about that. So the answer is yes, you do have to recompile, but it's done for you.
Great. And then I think you touched on this a little bit about build time improvements. I guess Scott was asking this question. How much more of an improvement do you expect?
That's a good question. I think it'll be the most dramatic for like the first build, when you haven't compiled any of your code before, and it's the first time that Babel is seeing it. If we actually succeed in just not having to do nearly as much of that work, then that's several seconds at least of build time that go away. On incremental rebuilds, the difference will be less pronounced, but hopefully the underlying performance of Node will also be noticeable. The improvement.
Tailwind. Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience here? Great. Once again,
Yeah.
one more.
The devices you mentioned, Raspberry Pi and something else, I missed the second. Can you repeat that? And can you talk a little bit more about maybe running JavaScript on embedded devices?
Yeah, so the question was running JavaScript on embedded devices, and then Ben mentioned, I think, Raspberry Pi, and you're curious about other environments?
Yeah. So Raspberry Pi is an ARM CPU. iPhones are also ARM CPUs. Lots of like smaller, lower power devices are based on that architecture. And there is currently a fork of Meteor that works on ARM, and I think the people who have been working on that will be very glad to hear that, like, the effort involved in that, like the turnaround after we do a release and they, like, you know, do a subsequent release should be much shorter. But why would you want to do that? Like, you know, why would you want to run a Meteor app on a, like, lower powered device like a Raspberry Pi, which is a tiny credit card sized computer? Well, the great thing about those devices, it's very easy to hook up sensors and actuators, like motors, to them. So, you know, imagine you're, I don't know, you have like an indoor like farming situation, and like you've got, you're measuring like temperatures and like moisture levels for whatever reason, turning the lights on and off, and you just want to have like a really responsive app for keeping track of that whole operation. Could imagine Meteor running on those devices, pushing that data to you, being a really good solution for something like that, as an example.
Cryptography with that?
I was thinking more along the lines of like DDP and
Sure.
potential there for syncing up, let's say.
Yeah.
Taking one source of information and another and another and another.
Yeah, you know, DDP goes both directions. So, like, not only could you, you know, potentially run a Meteor server on a little Raspberry Pi and, you know, connect to it with your phone over Wi-Fi or something like that, but the Raspberry Pi could be the DDP client and be listening for like instructions from a server over DDP. And yeah, you get even fancier with like a mesh network of intercommunicating devices. I think that would be really cool.
Great. With that, thank you, Ben. I know you have a plane to catch. Hopefully we'll see you soon in San Francisco.
Thanks.
So our next speaker hails all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Tom Coleman, core engineer here at MDG. You may also recognize him of Discover Meteor fame, who he was the co-author of probably the most popular book written about Meteor. And you'll be talking about how the community can help contribute to Meteor, something that we've been working on quite a bit over the past months, and how people can help out with the upcoming 1.4 release. With that, welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be back here in the Meteor HQ and talking at Meteor Night. It used to be called Dev Shop last time I was here. Today I should introduce myself a little more. I'm a member of the Meteor team. And today I want to talk to you about contributing to Meteor, how you can help. And actually today's talk is really a call for help, because the basic reason that I want to ask for help is that as the community grows in Meteor, we just have more and more people using the platform, and it's great. But a result of that is more and more people require help with the platform, and we're a small team, so we need to get better at enabling the community to help each other. Therefore, our ability to help people grows with the community alongside the amount of help that's needed. So I think, just to begin with, I think it's fair to say that the Meteor community is really incredible. Things like our forums, the help people give on Stack Overflows, the amazing amount of meetups we have around the world, events like tonight. In sort of the non-technical ways, I think we're second to none. It's incredible, the Meteor community. But I think historically it's fair to say that contributing technically to the Meteor platform has not been as easy as it could have been. And that's especially when you compare it to sort of really successful open source communities like Linux or Node itself. and we haven't made it easy enough, and this is something that we're really actively trying to work on. So one thing that we've done recently to try and change that is a Meteor guide, and I'll tell you a little bit about how that's gone and what we've seen as a result of that and what we've learned as a result of that. And it's been a great success. I mean, that's the TLDR. And we really want to bring some of those lessons and some of that culture of helping and of contributing and making a difference to core Meteor, to the framework that you probably use every day. And we know that people want to help. People have wanted to help and do help. As we saw, Ben showed us a moment ago, some people making some amazing contributions to make his job of upgrading the node version easier. But we want to make it easier to help, and we want to make it easier to help in more ways. So you don't have to necessarily be digging into the internals of our use of Node deep in the build tool, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, but you can still make a really positive difference to the Meteor core platform. And so 2 ways that I'll talk about doing that. The first is the docs, helping us improve the docs, and another is issues, and by that I mean the GitHub issues that come in and are created. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But first I'd like to talk about the guide. So this is the guide here, and if you've been watching or attending Meteor Night, you will have heard about the guide because Sachko has been up here talking about it since the very beginning, since it was a twinkle in our eye, because we made a really conscious effort from the very beginning of our development of the guide to do it in the open with your help, the community's help. And that, in a sense, was kind of had its challenges because part of the intention of the Meteor guide, which if you haven't heard of the Meteor guide, it's a set of, it's sort of like an intermediate level set of guidelines about how to go about building a Meteor app. So it's not documentation in the sort of pure API sense, it's more, if you're building an app, these are the things you're probably going to need to know. And there was a challenge and there was a lot of decisions to be made in writing the guide because one of the main goals of the guide was to present a consistent, complete set of opinions about which community packages to use. And along the way in doing that, we had to make some calls about, yeah, let's recommend this one over that one. Yet we were able to make those decisions, and I think we made those decisions in the best possible way that we could because of the openness. So we could have gone and sat in a room for weeks or months by ourselves, scared of getting anyone saying anything about the choices we were making because we knew we'd make people angry, and then come out with a complete, finished product. But instead, we made those decisions out in the open, and as a result, we got to hear about all the wrong decisions we were making along the way. And we didn't always change our mind, but I think we had the best information that we could get. And the most important thing about the guide, in terms of community, was this little red link up there that you can just about see that says edit on GitHub. And what that means is that people can make changes to it. They can send us pull requests. And for those of you that don't know, a pull request is a way of sending us, well, Ben's has been talking about them, but it's a way of sending us changes to things. And that can be changes to the code of the Meteor core tool, which Ben was looking at, or it can be changes to our documentation. And so what happened? Well, ever since the guide was launched at the start of the year, we've just seen a constant stream of pull requests. Here's a screenshot I took earlier today or yesterday, and you can see in the last week and a half, we've had a whole screen worth of pull requests. And most of these have been merged. The red ones haven't, for whatever reason. And they're not just all typo fixes and small changes. We've had some major contributions. So this is a pull request from Lauren Sands Ramshaw, which adds a whole section to the guide about how to override NPM packages with local versions if you want to do development on them, which was something that we just hadn't covered in the writing packages article. And this is just one of a few big contributions from Lauren. Here's another one from a user called Ski Run Man. I'm not sure what his real name is. I assume it's a him because it's a picture of a guy. And this one, again, of many, is really clarifying the app structure guide article and adding a whole section about how the automatic eager-loaded files work in Meteor apps, which we totally neglected to include in the article, which was a big oversight. And not just major contributions, but major contributors. You see these two names here in the top list of contributors to the guide since we launched it. And so that there's changes being made all over it. It's really, really amazing. And not only that, but we want to take it to the next level. So we want to make the guide not only contributed by the community, but also run more and more by the community. So Lauren has been good enough to volunteer to also help us maintain the guide. So if you go into the guide and click on one of those red make changes on GitHub buttons, you may find your pull request gets merged by Lauren. So that's great. So I think in terms of community contribution, the guide has been an unqualified success. And another small project that we've taken on recently that hopefully will also lead to similar levels of contribution are some changes to the docs. This is a fairly dry and technical change of switching the docs from a sort of arcane, hard to understand format to exactly the same format as the guide. So this is not yet complete. This is a screenshot of the new docs format. It's the same, and you'll see a launch of this in the next week or two. It's the same basic building blocks as the guide. This is a different skin. And all the Meteor docs will be there. And so hopefully it'll be just as easy for people to make pull requests against the docs and not only fix typos and resolve small problems, but make possibly larger changes like they have to the guide. So when you see this next week, you'll notice that there'll be an edit on GitHub button up there too, and hopefully it'll be just as easy to make changes to the docs. But the main thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight is issues. So GitHub issues. As I said at the start, Meteor keeps growing, the community keeps growing, and also the surface area of the actual framework keeps growing. And as a result, the amount of issue reports and pull requests that we get against the core framework grows with it. This is just a list in the last couple of days of all the issues that have been opened. And we haven't always traditionally been that great at dealing with this. So this is why I'm here to ask for help. I think we can, as a community, make this much, much better. And I think we can take the lessons that we've learned from the guide and bring that back to Meteor Core, which hasn't been the easiest thing to contribute to, and make Meteor Core a great thing to contribute to. And so the first step in doing that is making is enabling everyone to help us deal with help us triage issue reports. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that process and basically ask for people to come along and help us with that process. So we tend to find that issue reports basically fall into three main categories. They're either help questions that people have. I'm having trouble doing X with Meteor, or how should I do X with Meteor? They're bugs, so problems with the platform that people find, or they're feature requests. So I love Meteor to do Y. So how do we deal with, what is the process for dealing with the three of them? Well, help is easy. Some open source projects do have discussions and help questions in their GitHub repo, but we prefer not to. So mainly because we've got great other places to do that. So if someone comes and opens an issue, which falls into this category, it's easy. We can close the issue and we can redirect the person to Stack Overflow if it's a question, or the forums if it's more of the sort of discussion, how should I do this? Stack Overflow can be quite strict about what kind of questions are asked, and our forums are great. So why not have the questions there? The next type of issue that we see, and the most obvious one that you would think of, is a bug. And the primary thing that we're interested in with a bug, to make it something that's concrete and dealable with, is a reproduction. So what is a reproduction? A reproduction is a clear set of steps, preferably a Git repo that we can clone and run Meteor against, that someone can follow to demonstrate the problem on their local machine. And the idea of having a clear repo, or the best thing about having a clear repo, is that when a pull request is submitted against this bug, it's very easy to verify that the pull request does what it claims and that it fixes the issue. Now, I know from experience that creating good, simple reproductions can be a lot of work. You know, you find a problem with the framework and you just want to write it down and let someone know. And going to all the effort of building like a simple example app that shows the problem can be a real pain. Why would you waste your time doing that? Well, there's some really good reasons to do that. So the first reason is that simplifying the problem down to its simplest possible core often makes the issue or the bug much clearer. And so by doing that, you're much likely that someone will be like, oh yeah, the problem is this, I can fix that in 5 seconds. Whereas if you submit a vague and hard to understand issue report, they will be like, well, I'm not looking at that, that's too hard. So you're much likely to get the help you actually want. The second reason is you may find that in pulling all the specific bits of your app out of the reproduction that the issue goes away. So it may even be that the issue was in your app and not in the framework at all. And that's actually the best outcome for you because it's the easiest one for you to fix. You can just fix your app. So that's great when that happens, I tell you what. And the third reason is that sometimes when it is a legitimate issue, if you get the reproduction simple enough, that can be the basis of a test that's added to the framework's test suite, and that will make sure that that issue never happens again because we'll have a regression test suite and we'll never fail that test again. So you can see that there's some great reasons for a reproduction to exist against an issue. But getting a reproduction isn't always the easiest thing in the world, and people need help figuring out how to do that in some cases. So this is a really great chance for people to contribute. For people who are more knowledgeable about the framework, who have more experience creating reproductions, to help the creator of the issue build a nice, clear, simple reproduction. So the step for you, if you're interested in it being an issue triager, is does the bug have a reproduction? If not, work with the author to build one. Once the reproduction exists, can you confirm it? Can you run that reproduction on your local machine and see the problem for yourself? If so, we can classify the issue as a bug and we can mark it as having a confirmed reproduction, and that's great. The idea being that non-trivial pull requests against the framework that fix bugs should always be attached to one of these issues that has been classified. That makes it so much easier to prioritize that pull request and to tell whether it's an actually useful thing that's worth merging. The final type of issue, and I guess the most controversial, are features. A feature request is someone saying, I wish Meteor would do X. And the thing about features is we want to avoid them where possible. That might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but adding more surface area to the framework doesn't help anyone. What is good is to make a package that other people can use to get the same functionality and to decouple things. So the first question to ask when a feature request comes in is, can this be done with a package? And that's not always, again, like everything, that's not always that obvious. And certainly to the submitter of the issue, who may, again, not be that knowledgeable about the framework and what capabilities it enables a package author to have, it may not be that easy for them to know, yes, this could be a package. So that's a really great way that people who are slightly more advanced with the framework can help feature requesters. If it can't be a package, is there some simple thing we can do to the framework that would mean it could be a package? So that's the next step. And if so, we should shut this issue and open a new one asking for that simple hook. And finally, if it's not possible, we should classify it as a feature and mark it. And that will make it much, again, if we have pull requests to the framework that are attached to features that are clear and simple, and clearly justified, that'll make it much easier to evaluate those pull requests. And I think the important part of that sentence as well is the clear and simple part. So it's very easy to write a feature request that is vague and unmotivated. So a key part of the responsibility of the bug triager, the issue triager in dealing with a feature, is to try and simplify the description of the feature and to really tease out the motivation. Because at the end of the day, it's all about prioritization. So the better case that you make for your feature, the more likely it'll be prioritized. So we'd really love your help, and we really hope that people can come and make some great contributions in helping us triage issues. So there's a forum post, you'll see it because it's pinned on the forums, where some people have been talking about some of the details here, and we'd love you to come and tell us what you think, and volunteer if you like to get the correct access on the repo so that you can start triaging issues. You can expect to see a detailed write-up of exactly the details behind what I've been saying in the next week or two. And you can then start expecting new faces to appear on the repository if you just open issues and helping run this process. And the final thing I'll say on this is, in the weeks and months to come, expect to see more of this kind of thing. So this is really like a first step in the process of bringing a lot of these open source processes into the Meteor repository. So a lot of the successes that we've seen in the guide and in other open source communities come into the Meteor repository. So hopefully, if you're not interested in helping with issues, there'll be another way for you to help later on. But we'd love any type of help that you'd like to do, and I hope that you're excited to do so. So thanks.
Any questions for Tom?
Yeah, I would just ask, like, with GitHub issues and Stack Overflow and forums, do you feel you have the tools that you need to deal with this stuff effectively, or do you wish that something was different about one of the platforms, you had something else?
So the question was, with GitHub issues, the forums and Stack Overflow, do we feel like we have all the tools that we need to deal with this, or do we wish there was more? I would say, certainly GitHub issues has issues that has been well publicized in the last month or two, especially at our sort of scale, but they're clearly making strides towards improving it right now. I think the forums are pretty great. Our discourse forums work pretty well, and Stack Overflow is Stack Overflow. I think it's a bit of a giant these days. So yeah, I think GitHub issues probably could be better, but I think there's signs that it's going in that direction. And at the end of the day, I don't think that is the problem that we're having. I think it's more of a process issue.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
First of all, Tom, thanks so much for building the atmosphere. I
Oh.
don't think I would have ever gotten as far as I had without it. My app has 37 packages for atmosphere, so it's saved me tons of time. The question about building packages, you had the can it be a package, but you didn't. What about should it be a package?
Should it be
core? How do you answer that question?
should it be core?
Yeah.
Well, so the question is, rather than can it be a package, should it be a package? Should that be the first question? So I guess, did you mean should it be core? I think if it can be a package, it shouldn't be core. That's kind of.
Is that a binary, like always true?
I'm sure there are exceptions to any rule, but that's the basic rule. There are questions of should something be a package is really in the eye of the beholder, though. If someone thinks something is useful, who are we to say that that's not the case, I suppose. Oh, and also, I shouldn't take the credit for Atmosphere. It was mostly built by other people, but thanks.
Thanks for the 1.3 guide. As far as getting help in figuring things out as they should be, are the books that were published prior to 1.3, are they to be ignored, or is there still value in older books on Meteor?
So the question is about, with the release of 1.3, are the books that were published before 1.3 still relevant, I suppose? I have a conflict of interest there, being the author of a book that was published before 1.3, but I'd say yes. I mean, there are certainly patterns in the guide that came with 1.3 around importing files and structuring your app that may not be followed as closely by books. So it may not be as simple as just purely doing everything that they say without consulting the guide. But I think what a book can offer is explanations of details of the framework and talking you through how to approach things in a way that the guide is possibly a little more intermediate than a book. So the book might be a good bridging thing between first learning Meteor and being at the point where you can really understand the guide and start applying those patterns. So
Anybody doing revisions, or are you doing revisions for 1.3, publishing the best practices?
I'm not complete. So the question is, are people doing revisions? Are we republishing? I'm not sure exactly what the picture is in general. We're certainly looking at it, but I'm not sure.
You said you published the book. Are you planning to update it?
Yeah, we are planning to publish it update it for 1.3, but I'm not sure when that will happen exactly.
We have a question coming in from the live stream from Merlin. I guess it's a question and maybe a request. All these great issue and feature triaging tips, are they going to make their way into some form of a template when you file a new issue on GitHub?
Yes. So I don't need to repeat that question. Yeah, we have a few ideas there. I'm not exactly sure. We do have a template already, but we'll iterate on that. We're also thinking of having a little sort of questionnaire workflow that you might follow when you first open the issue, but we haven't nailed down the details of that yet. But yeah, we'll do anything we can to make it easier for people, of course. Yeah.
Maybe just a link to this talk too.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the house audience?
Does Meteor have any plans for a Meteoric MongoDB University type arrangement as certifications and experience and like online coursework or anything like that, or concern?
The question is, does Meteor have plans for sort of a university certification, sort of like MongoDB University?
You could get online and get up to speed with MongoDB in intimate detail.
Probably Mark would be better off answering that, but I think we'd look for the community, people to offer those sort of things. I don't think you'll see that something like that.
Yeah, I think we've tried to surface the best of what the community has to offer, as opposed to trying to be a kind of one-stop educational arm. And certifications is something I think we're keeping an eye on based on the maturity, particularly among professional developers, the need for a certification. We understand there's career value and actual real business value. And then I think you'll hear from one of our other feature talks from a partner, OKGrow, who is actually offering Meteor training courses, and an excellent one at that. So I think we'll definitely try to curate the best materials that are out there and also recommend the best courses. But we ourselves at MDG probably not going to try to compete with our partners, for example, and offer first-party education. And with that, thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everyone. And so we'll take a quick break, and we'll return in 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
check, check. Yeah, mic check, mic check, mic check. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, check. There we go. All right.
No, I have this. I have two bits. One is the div of all the code I want to write. Two is commit of all the code that I want to write. Probably appropriate to have hackers project.
I'm hoping these guys will. Campaign season?
Yeah, so he's out in Wisconsin now working for the Democratic Party. Yeah, we have
Because I know about that.
oh, sure. Yeah, that's right.
I didn't realize Nick was also activist.
Yeah, so we have a really awesome program starting on Monday, actually. We're really excited about it.
Oh, another girl too.
She really has a lot of.
Also notifications. I think it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think what people want to do, probably more on kind of like community building and more like scalable stuff versus going out physically.
You know, that's where's you guys out? Going to every meetup?
Nick spends so much time just answering emails, but it's like
How many worldwide meetups are there?
I'm not sure if it's more or less. Definitely more than one.
So that's just unsupportable.
But it's cool. I mean, it's literally kind of Kickstarter.
Yeah, no. It's very good. It's nice that they keep doing it at Longer HQ down in South Bay too. So
Yeah, I'm really excited to check out everyone like when I'm in Paris.
oh, nice. Paris in the summer.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's cool. It's the only time I can do it for free.
If you like Fort Lauderdale, I'll tell you what's great.
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll
You know, Danielle went there. In fact, she made me give her a list, right? And then my brother, who's a chef, also gave her a list of things to do in Paris, like this.
yeah, super interesting.
No, it's a diet before.
Yeah, I'm always like, I always forget that it's not enough to just fly over it. There's actually stuff there.
Plus, if you go in the summer, it's light really late, right? So it'll get dark at 11, you know. It's slide up to 4 because it's so far north. It's a lot. It's touristy. You stay off the tourist path a little bit.
Yeah, I've been in Paris only like a couple weeks now.
Where's the conference?
It's in Paris. I'm not sure what like venue. Yeah, and then I'm also gonna stop by Amsterdam. Yeah, it's funny because I'm just gonna take 3 weeks off this project like in the middle. So it's gonna be
In the model of Apollo?
yeah, it's like 1 month from now. So it's not gonna be done. So I guess that's why there's nothing else. No, we're not even close to being started. So much. But it's gonna be
Yeah, Danielle said she's going to be working on it.
most people are.
All hands on.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I guess even before, we would all kind of focus on like one feature of Meteor at a time. And this is kind of the same thing, except we'll just have something else also.
Plus, you guys have mandatory t-shirts.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's still sweet. Yeah, we're just trying to source our way into like other developer communities, right? Like Angular and React.
It's sad you don't have money from Draper Fisher. Steve Jefferson at Draper Fisher is always
So everyone can grab a seat. We'll get started in 1 minute.
in the lobby of your VC firm, like real hardware from Apollo.
That's awesome. We should get something like that.
Yeah, yeah. He buys it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I guess James will follow you too.
Okay.
But you guys aren't together. You guys aren't. Great. How's everyone doing? Feeling good? Ready for the second half? We got 3 more featured talks, 3.5 if you count the double header that I'm about to introduce. So our third feature talk for tonight will feature Meteor Night mainstream stalwart Sashko Stubailo from MDG, who's also the tech lead for our newly announced Apollo Data Stack project, who will make good on his promise from our last Meteor Night, if you recall, of showing a production-ready version of Apollo, as well as a demo. It was all slides last time, I think, right? So a lot of hand-waving. But he's here to make good on his promise. And he's also brought a partner in crime who came all the way from South Carolina, James Baxley, the Web Systems Director at New Spring Church, who's actually going to show you not only the contributions they've made to the project, but also how they're actually using it live in production. So big warm applause for Sashko.
Hello. Yeah, always great to be here at Meteor Night. It's always a lot of fun to give talks about stuff, and every time it's new stuff. Before it was the Meteor Guide, now it's Apollo. So, you know, many of the talks I've given before about Apollo have a lot of introductory content in them, in the sense that, you know, what is Apollo? What are we doing? Why are we doing that? And there's a lot of great places to learn about that. So if you haven't seen any of that stuff yet, you should like pause the stream right now. And you can go to our website, apollostack.com, and at the bottom, or actually right here where it says blog, you can click on our blog. And you'll be able to see all of the various blog posts we've already posted explaining what Apollo is and why, with the main one being this one. This is the post that basically summarizes my talk from last Meteor Night that will explain how Apollo is basically a sequel for Meteor, how it's also a sequel for Meteor for everyone else who's not using Meteor, and why we're building it and where it's going. Having said that, I'm just going to jump right in now into what we're actually doing now. So one thing that's been really huge in the last 2 weeks is we finally launched an alpha release of Apollo. So last time, like Mark was saying, I was just showing a bunch of slides and waving my hands. And this time I have real code to show you that you can try out today and download on your computer. And I'll, in fact, try it out on my computer live and see what happens. So yeah, so what did we actually launch that you can try today? So Apollo is a GraphQL-based data stack. What that means is we've tried to build a couple of tools that make it easier for you to set up a GraphQL server, which is basically a server that can access many different kinds of data. Here's a nice diagram. Maybe that'll be helpful. Yeah, so basically, it's a server that can consume lots of different kinds of data sources and gives you a GraphQL API on top of all those data sources, along with a client library that lets you query that GraphQL server in a very similar way to how you would use Meteor data in your Meteor app today. And the things that we actually launched include, like I said, the Apollo client and GraphQL tools / Apollo server. We've also launched with some integrations for popular libraries like React, Angular 2, Meteor, and Redux. So right now you can go there, and if you're using any of these libraries, check out what it would feel like to use Apollo with those today. We've also launched 3 different example apps. We have an example app that uses Material UI and puts a new user interface on top of our beloved forum, which doesn't actually have a mobile app, but maybe soon it will because we'll build it. A GraphQL server example that shows you how to build a server that consumes data from SQL, MongoDB, and REST in the same application, which is something that's pretty hard to do otherwise. And also a Meteor starter kit that I'm going to use today to show you how you can get started using Apollo or experimenting with it today. We've also launched a bunch of documentation and various resources. So in a website that is very suspiciously similar to the Meteor guide, you can learn about the different features that you can use in Apollo today and how they work and what you can do with them. Last but not least, Dominic, our wonderful designer, has put together this great website that you can send to your friends and say that this is like a legit project that looks pretty nice and you can trust that it's going somewhere cool. So yeah, essentially what we're doing is we're building this new data stack, which is going to be a new data system for Meteor, and we hope for everyone else in the world for all their different backends and front ends. So yeah, so read about that here. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the Meteor starter kit, and I'll show you some of the things that work in Apollo today, and you can extrapolate in your mind where those might go in the next couple of months. Because what we have now is a very, very early technical alpha. So it's something where you try it out and you can squint at it and you can see the full potential. And you can start contributing and experimenting with it. So you can follow along yourself. You probably won't do that in real time, but if you want to, eventually you can go get the Meteor starter kit, which is basically a very simple project that just has Apollo installed for you and set up a couple of basic things. So let's see what we got there. Okay. So here we are. This is like a Meteor application. I guess it's running, so that's good. And this is just, as you can see, there's some boilerplate that you have to write that's all documented in the Apollo docs to get the stuff running in your Meteor app, which is why it's an alpha and not a finished product. So this particular bit of boilerplate, for example, is about reading the Meteor login token in your server. So the first thing I want to show you, and I have this to-do list here. Okay, build a simple scheme. Okay, great. So the most important part of every GraphQL server is a schema. So you might be using simple schema in your Meteor app. You might be using SQL databases have a schema built in. But GraphQL is not a database schema. It's a schema for your application. And so what you want to do when you're designing your GraphQL schema is think about what kinds of data do you want to fetch from your user interface. So it's not what fields are in your database. It's what fields, as a UI developer, you would want to build the thing that you want to build. So let's drop in a schema here that I put together, okay, and deleted. So this is interesting. This is my first time giving a talk that doesn't have slides and actually has stuff to do during it. So we'll see what happens. So to get started with Apollo server, one of the things that's really, really cool is we have this declarative schema format that's the same schema format that you see on the GraphQL website. It's very nice. It's very easy to understand. We have different types. Those types have different fields. That's great. And the next great thing that Apollo gives us is to try out using the schema, we don't actually have to write any backend code at all. So all I have to do to start running some queries is go here and add some mocks. And the simplest mocks are no mocks. And so you'll see what that means in a second. So let's go to our GraphQL server. It says, OK, you need an actual query to run. So this is a great tool that Facebook has put together Facebook designed GraphQL initially, and they've been using it in production for 4 or 5 years now. And this is a great tool they have to explore your GraphQL server, all those types that you just saw in that schema, in an interactive way. And so this is just one of the developer tools I'm going to show you, because one of the main focuses of Apollo is not just to make it super easy to fetch data from multiple data sources, but it's also to give you as many tools as we possibly can to give you insight and understanding into what data you have and how you can fetch it. So yeah, so for example, let's see, we have the schema now. Let's see what we can query on that. Oh, look, we have a query that we can run called users. Okay, so what do we got on those users? Okay, we can have a username, commas are optional. We can have some notes. So this is an app I'm designing that has some notes for each user. Those notes have some text. They might be private or they might be public. Let's run a query. Wow. So we actually didn't write any code yet. The only thing we did is we typed up a schema, and then we put in an empty object for our mocks. And helpfully, Apollo Server has generated a bunch of fake data for us. This fake data is not terribly interesting, as you can see. All the strings are the same. The booleans are random, so that's kind of nice. Some of them are true, some of them are false. That might give us a little bit more confidence that our API is working. So what we could do now is we could take this mock data, and if we didn't feel like writing an actual backend right now, we could customize that so that our UI developer could take the schema, start writing a UI for an app without actually having a backend. And actually, that's what we're going to do right now, I think. So let me check my to-do list. So that's right. We've put in a declarative schema. We typed this query into graphical and figured out that we can run a query against our mocked API. And now we're going to make a simple user interface. So I'm going to go here into my cheat sheet of all the code I want to write. And I really don't trust myself to write all this code from scratch. So I'm just going to assume that you're going to believe me that it would be possible. I wrote it earlier today. So I'll show you in a second. Really? Okay. Oh, wait. Oh, it works now. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this. We can just look at this file here. So this is pretty simple. You have a couple of UI components. The most important thing is here in this UI component, we have the exact same query that we put into that graphical query editor, right? So we can take this code. It can be a little bit verbose, as we know sometimes, to write React code. It's not necessarily something you would want to do for a complicated app inside your demo. Okay, so let's put this into our app. And now let's go to where we have our running server. Great. So you can see now we have the exact same mock data we had in our graphical query explorer, but now it's in a UI inside our React components. So you can see where we had our private notes, we have a little lock, and where we had those strings, those are now, they say hello world. Some of these are allegedly usernames, some of these are allegedly text content of these notes. And so if we put in a little bit more effort to go and make those mocks actually represent the data that we wanted by using some of these fake data packages, we could make this look pretty similar to what a real UI of our app would look like without actually putting in any backend code. Like I haven't written anything to access any databases right now, and I think that's pretty cool. So now let's put in a little bit of a backend. So the backend part is something that's going to read from our Meteor MongoDB database. And I said before that Apollo is something that can read from any database. And you're just going to have to believe me for now. Or actually, you don't have to believe me because James Baxley is going to come and show you how in production they're reading from a bunch of different data sources. But I'm just going to copy in this code that reads from Mongo. So here we go. So we go into our little schema file. We're going to delete that, put in that. And so what we're doing here is we're defining something called resolvers. So up here, we have our declarative schema. This is great because it's something that looks almost like documentation. You can see exactly what data you can fetch from your server, but now you have to tell your server how to actually get that data. And so that's where the resolvers come in. The resolvers are in the same shape as the type. So you see you have some resolvers for the user type, for mutations, which I'll get to in a second. But basically, they tell you, for the notes field for a user, how do you actually query that? And so I just have to put in these resolvers, and then back in my server where I had these mocks, instead of having the mocks, I'm going to use these real resolvers that come from the backend. And so when we go here, we're going to refresh, and we're probably going to have an empty page because because there's no actual data. So let me register an account. This is using Meteor accounts. Oh, come on. This is what happens, right? Every time. So I'm going to reset my database. Dom is like laughing at me right now. He's like, ha ha ha. Come on. There we go. Yeah, I tried compiling some things with Webpack and NPM. It wasn't that much faster. So. Well, okay. One thing I can show you is, okay, it works. So let's create an account. Okay, so I've created an account, and it looks like I have some problems. Aha, let's see, what actually happened. Mutation.create note defined. So this is an example of some helpful error messages you can get from Apollo server that tell you, like I said, we're focusing on these developer tools, where this is defined here, it's called create note, but here it's called post note. And so it helpfully told us that those were different. Hopefully in our actual app UI, we're using the right one, which is create note. Yeah, this is the one. Okay, so create note is right. So let's go back here. Great, okay, so we have an actual user. I don't have any notes right now, so let's add some notes. This is dangerous. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to check out my branch. Okay, anyway, the point is that you can tell that that would have been very helpful if I didn't have any errors. One thing that's really, really cool about Apollo is that it's built on top of Redux. And what that means is that even though our data fetching is declarative, right? So we have this, this query here that just says, I want to, whenever I render this component, I want to run this query and put the results into my UI component called app. Sometimes it can be hard to debug declarative data fetching, right? As you might know in Meteor, when you do a subscription, sometimes you might have to open some debug console to understand what messages are actually going across the wire and why that's happening. And so with Apollo, one of the things that's really great is you can actually look inside your Redux dev tools to see, look, I just initialized a query. Here's the string of the query. Here's the query that's actually sent to the server. And then you can see what the result was right inside there. And eventually do stuff like time traveling and making sure that the data you got from the server is actually what you expected. Okay, so let's see what we end up with here. Okay. If this time it doesn't work, then I don't know what I would do. Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, so as you can see now, I'm able to hit enter, create a new note, refetch. I can mark it as private, which marks it with a little lock. And then if I sign out, then I will only load the tasks that are not private because, like I said before, we've built some simple integrations with the Meteor account system so that you can take your existing login. In the same way in your methods and publications in Meteor today, you can check who the current user is. You can do a simple check inside your resolvers to know who the current user is and make sure that you don't return any private tasks. Anyway, so that's pretty much that. You can go to the Meteor starter kit. You can check out this pull request I opened that has my Meteor Night code. That actually does work. I just mistyped something. And try it out yourself. And I really welcome people to put in some experiments. There's a lot of people experimenting already with awesome stuff like server-side rendering, like James Bax is working on, integration with Rails, for example. Basically, the point is this is something where we're looking to build as many integrations as we can with different communities and have something that anyone can use. And now James is going to show you how this thing actually is working for them in production, if not today, but very soon, and how they can use all their data sources together.
Thank you, Sasha. Yeah, so hi everybody. This is my first Meteor Night. Very excited to be here. As soon as I get there we go. Okay. So, like Tusker said, my name is James Maxley. I'm the Web Systems Director, Director of Development at New Spring Church, which is a multi-campus church in South Carolina with a number of locations and some, I think, pretty cool online stuff that we're doing. So, what I want to talk to you today about is Apollo. Kind of that's why we're here and what we're talking about, and what it's like to be a community contributor for that, and really what the business value behind Apollo is, and why, as a church, we're kind of looking into this as something that can really help us in the future. So again, amazing Apollo site. Check it out. It's pretty great. This is the Apollo repo or the organization on GitHub, and I'm happy that my little photo is up there. I feel like I've arrived. And so there's a lot of really great projects already in this repo, and they're all open, and they're all something that you can go and check out and kind of be part of. Like the starter kit that Sasha just showed, the docs, which are really great and built off the same Meteor guide template. That way we try and every feature we ship, we want to make sure that as you're starting to use it, you can check it out and use it right now, which is really cool. The kind of general idea of what we want to do, as well as React Apollo, which was one of the integrations that I built and actively maintain, along with additions to the core client code. And then there's New Spring Web. So this is kind of our organization, the team that I represent. And we have more repositories than we ever should, but we have a lot of ongoing projects. And we have a lot of ongoing projects in a lot of different languages. As an organization that has grown a lot over the past 15 years, like I imagine most of you or most consumers, you use a mixture of your own internal stuff, which you would of course love to have everything as internal, and exterior services, because you just can't build everything you want to. And so we, just like most, we manage that tension as well as we can, but there's certainly times where we'd love to have something internal. One of the things that we just launched, along with this project that I'll be doing today, is an internal management system called Rock. And it was a project with a group called the Spark Developer Network, and it's an open source management system for people. It's a way to kind of see what's going on and kind of take care of people, as well as how to essentially run a church. It has financial accounts, it has people data, check-in, kind of everything that you need to do to run a church. It's a ASP.NET app, so it's written in .NET. It's a SQL-backed, an MS SQL-backed database, and so as we know, a traditional Meteor app, we can't really use any of this data. And so without Apollo and GraphQL, choosing Meteor means that we immediately lock ourselves out of all of our people data, which doesn't really allow us to make sense as a business. We also have our existing site, like our front-end brochure site essentially, and this is a private repo. Because the only reason it's private is because we use a program called Expression Engine, which is a PHP application that's a content management system that we use to power our sites. And so there's licensing agreement, that's why we keep it private. But that's MySQL. So as I kind of demo this app today, whenever I say MySQL, that's our front-end sites, and whenever I say SQL, that's our people data. And then we have our Meteor app, which is Mongo. So I want to kind of talk about what it looks like to merge Microsoft SQL, MS SQL, MySQL, Mongo, and a few REST clients, like, for example, the Google Site Search API. So I'll start by first introducing to my boss, John Horton. This is not his real photo. And so this is inside Rock. So this is inside our church management system, and you can see on the left side there we have our internal staff hub, our volunteer hub. So we have sort of a content management system inside of Rock. We also have our metrics, so attendance. So we have kind of raw data that we know if the church is being successful or not, or kind of where we need to focus. We have all of our people data, which is hundreds of thousands of people. When we moved to this service in March, we migrated a few million rows of data, so it's a big app. As well as our financial data, and then some associated tooling to work with the application. So again, this is backed by SQL Server, and it's running on a VM, actually on a dedicated machine at our campus in Anderson, South Carolina, right now. We'd love to get it to the cloud one day, but we'll get there. This, if you're unfamiliar with Compose is a MongoDB hosting service, which I know a lot of Meteor developers use. We love it because it's an easy way to get started on Mongo. So this is our Meteor app, and these are actually articles or pieces of content that my boss has liked in our upcoming native app that we're going to be launching next month. So as he's gone through and read an article, and he's like, yeah, this is really great. He's clicked a little heart button. We don't have the cool Twitter animations yet, but hey, maybe we'll get there. And he saved this to say, I want to look at this later, I want to show this to somebody, or I just really enjoyed this content. And so, if you look into it, you're going to start to see, let me actually go back one. For instance, see if I can find the right one here. Albums. Okay, so this is, you can see turn it up. Actually, probably it's too small. Is that better? Okay, so you can see the title here is turn it up. So what this is essentially it's a link from our user, which is the Meteor count system in Meteor, both back to our SQL application, so our person data, as well as forward to our content management system, which is where we have lots of content, because we've been doing this for 15 years now, and we have a lot of content creation that's happened. And so although we're working to kind of migrate this eventually, right now we have just loads of data there. So this is actually that Turn It Up album. So as you can see, Turn It Up, which is a music album for our kids ministry. And so with this, you have stuff like album images, you have the actual content, you have the list of tracks. And this is all MySQL backed. So we've seen SQL, MongoDB, and MySQL. And so I kind of want to show you what it looks like to use GraphQL and use Apollo, which is built on GraphQL, to do stuff with this data, and kind of how this is really what we think is going to change the way that we build applications. So I'm going to kind of try and live build out a query, but I've cheated a little bit, and I've got mine kind of saved here, but I'll still kind of walk you through it. So if we look at John, you can see in the URL at the end here, that's his ID. So we'll use that for lookups because it's easier. In production, we use an authentication service that's actually back through the Meteor count system. That way, private data is private, and that's been a pretty cool integration to write. And actually, Jonas, who's working on the Apollo client, shipped what will make it a lot easier for us to take that client code and open source it as an easy way to use Meteor count system with Apollo. So hopefully we'll have that out soon. So I've put in John's ID as a query variable down here. So you can imagine if this was in your app, you would pass this in as the logged in user's ID, and it's going to make the request. So we'll build out this query here. I'm just going to kind of decompose these comments. So what you have here is a basic GraphQL query. The overall name. Oop, did I kick something? Maybe. Okay, so I think I kicked the plug, but hopefully we're back. No. Sorry, guys. It's trying. Oh, it keeps flashing like it's trying to come back on.
Let's put another machine on this real quick.
Oh, there we go. Hey, we're back. Okay. I'll try and not kick the lights off again next time. Okay. So back to where we were. We have the get person query, and you can see GraphQL is a statically typed system, which coming from the JavaScript world, in the beginning, I was kind of frustrated by, because I like how easy JavaScript is to just say, like, hey, it's a string, it's a number, it's all true, maybe it's all false, we don't really know, but it's kind of fun that way. But one of the cool things about GraphQL being typed is you're able to get some of the great developer tooling, like Sashko talked about, and you'll be able to get some of the great analytics, and really even eventually some really great UI tools as designers and developers to kind of just get access to all of your information. So we're going to get a person, which is a node defined on the schema. So like we have a GraphQL backend that will migrate to Apollo server pretty soon. And so we're just going to get John's first name and last name. So sure enough, Jonathan Horton. So that's pulling live data right from here. His full name is Jonathan, so that's what we're pulling. And then actually, if I were to add nickname, then this should be John. So now with this query, we've been able to get SQL data like that. Which is really great. And in fact, believe it or not, this isn't even using a SQL adapter for all the queries. We have kind of a mixed world right now where some of this uses REST to call the client, and some of it uses SQL as we migrate stuff over. So you're probably not going to know when, but sometimes this is going to be a REST call, and sometimes it's going to be a database lookup. And we actually built on top of this app, we have a Redis instance that caches all of this data as well. So most of these requests actually go to Redis, and they never make it to an application. So from a sense of scaling, GraphQL can let you, and Apollo can let you granularly scale your application as needed. So let's say that like us have an internal machine You can set the TTLs and you can set your cache much more heavily on that because the availability may not be quite as high as you'd want it to, or it may be more expensive to scale out. So that's really cool. So let's say that we were making a UI component that was like a little profile card. And so we want person's first name and last name, and of course we've got to have Colonel Sanders. So we need a photo. So now we have his URL of his photo. And then because we're multi-campus and we don't really know where John is, we want to be able to get his campus. So campus is another node, and it's another table in our SQL database. And so you kind of think of this as a pivot join. So we can take his ID and we can grab what campus he has, and then get some information about the campus. And one of the interesting things is that in some instances, like you can kind of make circular dependencies where you can like traverse down your nodes and join almost to infinity. I don't recommend it. But location is another table in our system, and so it's not going to have any data here, but you can expand into a location object as well. So right now this is all SQL, but it's really fast and it's being pulled in. So I'm going to take campus back off. As I showed earlier, the likes is actually in Mongo. So I'm just going to pull the ID. And the ID of this like is going to be that Mongo ID. So I'm going to pull these, and you can see this is actually the entry ID that's associated with that article or that piece of content in our MySQL database. But what you're seeing this ID field from is Mongo. So this is now SQL and Mongo data joined together through the Meteor count system, which is really awesome. And it's hooked into our ROC account system, and so we're kind of bridging that gap. But the ID doesn't really do me any good. I can't show a cool card of the most recent thing that John liked based off the ID. I can probably show counts, but that's not really all that helpful. So let's say that I want to just show the title. So again, one of the cool things here is that GraphQL has autocomplete with this app, but you can also kind of assign on the fly what your names are going to be, which as a front-end developer means that however the backend was designed isn't going to restrict me on how I want to use the front end. Which is really incredible. So let's say that, to be semantic, I wanted to call this the card title. And you can see the started to be the red underline because card title doesn't exist, but GraphQL will let you map an existing field to that name. So when I build my components as a UI designer, I need to know contextually what this data is for, instead of everything being this abstracted name. So I'm going to remove, actually I'll keep both of them right there. So you can see it's going to pull both those fields. And one of the reasons why it can pull both those fields is because we don't have any arguments, but you can actually use different arguments on the same field. So say if you had a photo and you wanted a big image, like a 500 by 500, and a small image of 200 by 200, you could make those at the same time on the same request. So there's no extra processing that goes on. You don't have to make subsequent requests. You can do it all at once. So I'm going to remove the card title up here. So cool, now I've got some card titles, and you notice one of the second likes that we saw in the database is turn it up. But something like waiting is the hardest part is an article. So we have different content types, but GraphQL will let you go through and kind of map all those together. So I'm going to uncomment all this query together. And what we're looking at now, because you saw in our Compose database, we already had title and we had entry ID, which we are mapping to ID. So I could be lying to you, and this could all just be Mongo data right now. But as you can see, none of this information is here. So we're going to move beyond the Mongo world now. So we've gone from SQL to Mongo, and now we're going to go to MySQL. So when I hit this query, hopefully, sure enough, I have data. So if I looked at turn it up, which is this one right here, you can see down here the title, turn it up, and this has all of the tracks here. So it has the file, so we can add them to an app and you can stream them. We have description, we have images, so we can show a nice UI, and that's all controlled in the MySQL database right now. So with this one query, and I'll kind of zoom out a little bit, that really is, I mean, it's 26 lines of code with a query wrapper. I've gone through 3 different databases. I've pivoted through those databases based off of IDs. I have this data cached in Redis, so it's near instant, and I can make these requests from as many clients as I want to. So I'm not even limited by the scale of my Meteor app because it's all the clients that are doing the heavy requesting work. And I can scale my GraphQL service kind of infinitely, which is really cool. So that's kind of how data comes. Now, this is really great, and we're all developers, so we really like to see this. But at the end of the day, we're talking about business value here. How does this help me to make an app better, faster, to help my end users? So one of the apps that we launched along our new internal platform was an external way to give. We're a church, so we handle all of our income through donations. And so this is our giving platform. And with it is a way to have your accounts. So I'm actually signed in right now. I have a saved credit card. And this allows you to go through and give. What you're looking at right now are those 3 databases. So this big guy in the brain suit is stored in our content management system because he's a nice big image. All of these campaigns are a mixture of data. So the content that you see is in our content management system, but the financial account that they represent is in our internal system because it ties in with our financial system. And then me being logged in means that I have Mongo data as well because I have my user account and I'm like successfully authenticated. So when you load this page, when you load any page pretty much on our new platform and every app that we build from here on out, you're going to be getting data from at least 3 resources. What's really cool is that Apollo and GraphQL play really well with REST endpoints too. So we have this search app and or the search part of our site, and we'd love if you could, or if we could one day build an Elasticsearch, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we use Google Site Search behind the scenes. And so this query is going to go directly to Google Site Search, and it's going to return it back. So if I search for Anderson as like the campus, then it's going to make that query, and then this is all data pulled from Google Site Search. So I just hit Google as a REST endpoint. We don't cache any of Google's because that's in the license agreement we make with them, but you can still see how quickly it is. Google, of course, has near instantaneous response, and so the bottleneck's always going to be on us, but GraphQL in and of itself is very, very fast. And so this is in production. We've had it in production since March 9th. We've taken in significant amount of money. We've had a really good response from it. And even the response time itself is pretty good. So I'm going to be brave here, and I'm going to refresh the page, and hopefully nothing goes down. So right now we're coming in and averaging around a 600 to 750 millisecond first load. And for a Meteor app, normally that first load, as you're aware, is a spinner. But if you look at ours, there's no spinner. What you get is kind of dummy content, and then you can see, or not dummy content, you get real content. And then you can kind of watch the review using. So we'll come in, and we know that I'm logged in, and then later on the client side, we'll fetch my saved account. And so what's really going to read this object, so that's kind of how we're using GraphQL and soon to be Apollo. Part of this project is running a little bit on Apollo. Our native app that we're going to be rolling out next month, right now it's been entirely moved to Apollo. So the Apollo client is kind of production ready depending on the scale of what you need to use. But we also really encourage contributions. It's been great. I know Tom talked about being a community member and a contributor. This is how we've been able to do that, is because Meteor has accepted us to start to be able to do this. And in fact, I have an open PR right now on the Apollo client to add polling, which is kind of like the first step towards reactivity. So all in all, we're really excited about the future of Apollo. It's already made business sense for us, and I think that's going to make a lot of business sense for you guys. So thank you.
Great. So if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, either about my part or James.
How did you manage to get this done before, while the app is still crashing?
So the question was, how were we able to ship our product while Apollo is still early in development, essentially?
Did you guys get it before it was actually released?
No, so we kind of wrote a pre-Apollo before we kind of got connected with Meteor. So Facebook's open source GraphQL, and we've already used Redux behind the scenes in our app. So what we built was essentially a very bad version of Apollo that powers that site right now, and it's kind of glued together, but that's part of shipping. And so what my team has been able to do is working with Sashko and the Meteor group as we've been adding to Apollo, is we've been migrating our stuff over to be using Apollo. So it's all open source technology, and so we just kind of were a little bit early in the game.
Yeah, and one of the things we're doing is essentially intentionally shipping everything before it's ready, so that we can give people a way to have an input super early in the development process, so we don't get to somewhere where we have something that's polished, but it's the wrong thing.
So you showed one GraphQL query that was pulling from 3 different databases and 3 different backends. How gnarly is it to go in and write the
Yeah, so the question was, like, looking at these three databases, what does it look like to write the resolvers for it? So the question, I think the answer is yes and no. Once you write the initial bindings to, like, the database, a lot of times it's pretty easy because it's a single ID join. And so writing the resolvers is taking one node or one field from, like, a parent node and getting the ID from that and using it to do a lookup on another one. And so really, it hasn't really been all that bad, no. One interesting thing about this, if you're like an active Meteor developer on a team, is shipping the back end and the front end kind of always happens together. But with this split of Apollo server, our GraphQL server is running separately from our Meteor app. So we can kind of add new features to that before our client developers get to it. And so when they want to go live, they don't have to coordinate anything else. The data's just there waiting for them.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add is that's one of the places where we want to focus on in the future is making it super easy to bind to common data sources, whether that's MongoDB or SQL, or maybe it's something crazier like Salesforce or Dropbox, so that you can start pulling from things that aren't even databases.
Yeah, so the question is, right now we have 3 databases. Do we have plans for expanding that now that it's no problem to connect? The answer is yes. We certainly don't want to have just every database because we can, although we certainly could. But we definitely believe that as developers, and you know this, we build things for certain reasons. And so trying to shoehorn relational data into Mongo is not the best practice. And so there's this new exciting world of graph databases that we would love to get into to start building complex relational queries that even on SQL Server would have some issues with. And so to be able to do that, and we can actually just write the resolver for Apollo and do it, means that we're kind of no longer limited by what our stack supports, because our stack now supports everything. So we can build what's best for our service.
And we had one question from the YouTube stream, which was, does Apollo currently support Blaze, or will it support Blaze? Right now, we don't have a first-class integration with Tracker or Blaze. The integrations we have are with observables, which work great with Angular. And we have a React container that works really well with Redux. But if people have a desire to have that kind of integration earlier rather than later, please file an issue on GitHub, and we can talk about the best way to get that done. Maybe one more question? No? Great.
Cool. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Otko. Thanks, James. Okay, Grow guys, want to set up? And then also talk us, let's get you guys mic'd up also, so you're set to go. So while Paul plugs in, I'll do a quick intro for you guys. Sure, yeah, it's right down here. There you go. So the OK Grow guys are longtime Meteor veterans. They recently joined the Meteor Prime program, which makes them a very exclusive partner of ours. They hail from Toronto, Canada, even though Ben's from Chicago. Chicago. So they've traveled a long way to come hang out in MDG headquarters, and we appreciate it. You may also recognize Ben from the Transmission podcast. So he's the co-host of that, if you guys have been following that on YouTube or via our podcast. And you guys have a very fun and humorous talk, I think, planned as we walk the history of the Meteor framework, pre-1.0 to the most recent 1.3 release and beyond. So looking forward to some laughs and also your insights. Applause for these guys.
Except we've got a technical problem. I think something's dead here.
It's Apollo's fault.
Should we use yours?
I don't think they have the right things.
All right, there might be a reboot that has to happen.
Okay.
That's interesting.
You're going to have to improv that.
You could do that.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
This is kind of funny because we've been bugging Paul to get a new computer for like forever. But he's waiting out for the legit thing, so like WWDC is going to come out. Yeah.
New MacBook Pros
Seriously.
or something.
Seriously. He wants the rose gold one.
Okay, it's rebooting. So, you know what?
I'll just introduce ourselves while it's rebooting. I'm Paul Dowman. This is Ben Strahan. We're from OK Grow. OK Grow is a Meteor consultancy. We build great products with Meteor for clients. We help teams with existing Meteor apps work on their apps. And we do training. So that while we were, okay, here we go. It's almost ready. Yes, it didn't crash. Oh, but now. What? Okay. Oh. Yeah. System set. Wow. System preferences. That's it. That pulled up Wikipedia. Oh boy. There we go. Oh my gosh. I should not have made that joke about like MDG's office being haunted on the YouTube, or yeah, the YouTube chat. Now it's like really coming back to haunt us. All right, get on page 1 so they don't see our jokes. All right. Yeah, get on page 1. No, no, no. Oh boy. All right, let's present. All right, rewind. Thank you for bearing with us. So we're from OK Grow, and as I was starting to say, in addition to building products with Meteor for clients and helping clients with existing Meteor apps work on their projects, we do training. And so we recently updated our training material to Meteor 1.3 and React. So we've been doing training for 2 years. It'll be 2 years next month since we first did the very first version of this course. And we've refactored the same app all the way through from version 0.8 to 1.3. So that was 2 years of refactoring to meet pretty much every different version and every change in the community's idea of best practices. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Okay, so what that was supposed to be was that we are boring developers, and so we need help entertaining you guys. And so Jean-Luc was going to help us. So Picard's going to help us be entertaining while we give this talk. Most of the stuff, if you guys are experienced with Meteor, like you're going to already kind of see what we're talking about here, and you've already like lived this with us. So this is kind of like a trip down memory lane to have fun, because Meteor is fun, and I love developing with Meteor. And upgrading, even though there's been a lot of upgrades and best practices have changed pretty rapidly, it's been fun to do that. So let's have fun to like kind of think about it for a little bit. First, I wanted to talk about app structure. And yes, it's boring, but this was exciting. This is what got all of us like really hooked at first, is like it was super simple to write an app. You have your client code and your server code right there, and everyone had a single client folder, a single server folder. Everything was global. And you would throw all your routes in one file. You'd throw all your publications in one file. And that was amazing. And the magic was amazing. And it would work. And you're like, oh my gosh, I am a killer developer. No. So let's see if we can like impress Picard here. So we tried to like move a little bit more to the professional way. And so in our 1.0 class, we moved to like a feature kind of structure where we wanted to kind of be modular, but it was a modular wannabe because still everything was global. But now we like got more familiar with like the Meteor stack and everything. We found out we can have multiple client folders. We can have multiple server folders. We're not locked into one. And it was a misconception even I had when I first started. And finding that actually reading the docs was helpful. So I started reading that and it was good. Multiple lib folders. And it was fun. Now all of a sudden, you guys can see like how it was broken out by feature. And now you have multiple route files. You have multiple publication files. And things are making sense. It's easier to develop, to pass on to people, to break out. Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful that he's getting happy. I am happy too. And then Ben Newman came along, and I became amazed and super happy because his name is Ben. And he was doing some cool stuff at Meteor. And one thing is that he helped us go to ES 2015, and one of the benefits was ES 2015 module support. And it was amazing. So now we have the imports folder, another special folder. But this folder is probably one of the most special ones that I enjoy the most, because now we have true module support. And now it's a true joy to really develop and at the same time call myself a professional developer. And Jean-Luc likes it a lot. He likes it a real lot. And that's kind of freaky, so we're going to move on to the next one. The next one's routing.
So routing is something that's been really interesting to the community all the way through the history of Meteor. So thinking back to the very beginning was Iron Router. So when I started using Meteor back in version, well, actually we started with 0.6, but our first class was done with Meteor 0.8. And so Iron Router was really the only choice, and it was what everybody used. And as you can see, it did a lot of stuff for you. It was really awesome. So here you can see from this code snippet, it's loading our data for us. It's subscribing to our publications. It's loading the data with a query from the client-side cache, making that available for the templates. And that was amazing. So that was really cool. Then along came Flow Router, and this was about the time that Meteor 1.1 came out, and I think it was Meteor 1.1 that introduced session template level subscriptions. And so Flow Router did a lot less. Well, one of the reasons why people liked it was it had a more minimalist design and a little bit more modular, but mostly it did less actually for you. So it did not load the data for you. It let your templates take care of that. That was a good thing because you define what you need closer to where you need it. That was great. So not just cool, that was seriously coolio. All right, but now in our newest version of the class with 1.3, the world of NPM is now open to us. You can use any of the 4,542 routers on NPM. I don't recommend it, but there are some good ones, and we're actually using React Router, so that's an example of something that would have been a little bit more difficult to do before.
Yes, we love JSX. Oh, so does Jean-Luc.
So does Jean-Luc.
Yes, deal with it. All right, so like the view layer, so that's the next thing that we're going to talk about. So forever, we have been in a love affair with Blaze. It just was so nice to work with, super easy, super friendly. I think this is what attracted a lot of entry-level developers to come to Meteor, saw all the magic that it did, but also they weren't intimidated, because Blaze was not intimidating. If you had some front-end knowledge of basic HTML and CSS, now you can get going with Blaze, and it was like very friendly. I think we have to attribute a lot of Meteor's initial success to how well like the view layer was handled, and also that was like a technical feat because like React wasn't around, you know, and so that was huge. So we love it. It was easy, it was powerful, the API was amazing. Yes, Jean-Luc, thank you. And then 1.3 came around, and React and Angular became first-class citizens, or it was earlier than that. But anyway, 1.3 is when we decided to really go for it. And that's also when they were recommending installing through NPM instead of, kind of like our own package through Atmosphere. And React is amazing. React is great. You know, the integration is great. The community is even better. Facebook is amazing for supporting this and pushing it forward. The lifecycle hooks are great. Like now you got really deep integration. Hooking it up with jQuery plugins is interesting. It's fun. But the performance is also amazing too. I remember I got kind of hooked on React when I was watching them at like a Famous meetup. And they like matched Famous and React together, and all of a sudden they're like, we think we got the most performant everything. And Steve Newcomb was like silent. He's like, no, mine is more performant. But no, I was like, all right, so I'll check out React. And there I am. And then now see where the cards fell. So I'm just saying. Anyway, you know, and when everything's great, Jean-Luc is happy. And we like seeing him dance. Now,
1.4, like now we got to be planning for 1.4. So like, I'm curious, maybe that should be Angular? I'm interested. So who loves Blaze in here? Awesome. Okay. Who uses React right now? Awesome. Who loves that there's Angular support? Interesting. Interesting. I heard the enterprise loves it, and I heard there's a lot of money in the enterprise, so I don't know. It could be interesting. Okay. Thank you for that. Next is data management. So this is something that hasn't been really vocal on the forums or anything else, but it's something that really has changed quite a bit since the time that I started with Meteor. And we brought a pro to help. So when I first started with Meteor, one of the things that I really loved about it was that you could kind of pretend that your data was on the client. You could update it in the local mini-Mongo cache and save it there, and the framework would just take care of syncing it back to the server for you. That was really awesome. It was really simple. We had the allow and deny rules for those of you that remember those, or probably some of you are still using them. It was amazing. But there was a bit of a security debate that happened, and despite the convenience, I think the idea of best practices has changed. And the problem is that it's very difficult to be really sure, especially for the update rules, that you've gotten every possible security scenario handled in your allow and deny rules. So the ideas of best practice have changed, and now it's generally recommended to use Meteor methods to update your data, and that's what we do. It's also a more recognizable pattern. It's kind of, for people that are coming to Meteor from other frameworks, it's just a more normal way of doing things, making what is essentially an API call to the server. And the cool thing is that optimistic UI update still works. So that was one of the things that felt really cool about changing it in the data locally, is that your UI would immediately update without having to wait for the round trip to the server. But not that commonly known, I find, is that still happens with Meteor methods. So that's awesome. And goodbye, hacker. There we go. But actually, I mean, I should say that using methods doesn't solve everything. So just be careful about, for example, passing query. Don't construct queries on your client and send them over through your methods, that kind of thing. But it's better. And now in 1.3, there is an incremental improvement to that, which we really like, which is called validated methods. So this is a package, and if you haven't seen this, check out the Meteor Guide article on methods. It's just a new way of writing methods where you can, they're a little bit more easily testable. You can mock out things. You can run the validation code by itself. And yeah, that's kind of the way of doing it now. All right, so we're done. Or are we? Well, I think I'm really looking forward to the next version of this course that we do, which I expect will probably incorporate Apollo. So the cool thing about that is being able to access data from other sources. You heard all about it before that, so we're pretty excited. And you can put Apollo into an existing Meteor app, so I think I'm looking forward to doing that.
And so is Jean-Luc. Very cool. So that's at the end of our talk, so we ran out of time, but there's some other honorable mentions. There's been huge progress on testing, and just the whole process through that, we've talked it to death, but I love the contributions of Velocity and everyone even before that with the test runners and all that. So testing has always been an interesting thing with Meteor, and it's great that now we have a really solid test state case for Meteor. Also packages and NPM wrappers and just NPM integration before, and like how we would all hack that together, and Atmosphere is filled with like wrapper packages for NPM and all that stuff. And then the whole state management, which is still like changing quite a bit, especially like with the introduction of Redux and all that. And Apollo is going to be kind of pushing that conversation forward too. So too bad we ran out of time. But does it all really matter? No, because the guys that are working on AI are going to make us obsolete. And it's futile to resist. But anyway, thank you very much. If you guys are interested in this training, you guys can go to okgrow.com/training, and we're hiring. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Any questions for the OK Grow guys? No? You guys gonna? Sure.
So with security, when you're dealing with Minimongo on the client, what keeps a user from logging in as a regular user and then using Minimongo to do a query to get all users' emails right in the console?
Right, you're still going to...
Yeah. Paul, you want to repeat the question for the stream?
I'm sorry.
Sure.
To repeat the question, what stops somebody from essentially browsing the Minimongo database on the client and, for example, seeing the list of all the users? Is that the question? So nothing really has changed with that, and the answer to that is that you define your publications on the server side to only publish things that are available to whoever the user is. And nothing has really changed too much about that in over the time that I can think of. So yeah, there's no security issues, just careful how you define your publications. Does that answer that for you? Yeah? Okay. Cool. Thanks. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So, last but not least, the two gentlemen from Paris. Not only are they founders of TalkUs.io, Vianney and Francois Lecoyat. Am I pronounced that correctly? Lecoyat. Are very, very enthusiastic Meteor evangelists. And Vianney also is the co-organizer of the Meteor Paris meetup. So if you happen to be in France and in Paris, and between your visits of the Eiffel Tower and other tourist attractions and want to go learn Meteor, he'd be happy to host you at his meetup event there. So I'll pass it off to you guys, and welcome to San Francisco.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here to show you our project, TalkUs. TalkUs is an help desk right in Slack. We started TalkUs 5 months ago, and we wanted, with this idea, and we wanted to prove that this idea was great, so we tried to create a prototype really fastly. With Meteor, we will be able to create a prototype in 2 days, and we show it to some companies to get some feedback. They was very, very good, so we continue to create developing this project, and we start a closed beta 1 month after. We also be featured on Product Hunt, and so we continue to add new features, like be able to get texting and emails and also phone call from customers directly to our client. And since the start of this month, we have paying customers. So we grow really fastly, and Meteor helps us a lot.
Okay, so let's see how it works. So on the left, you have Slack. I hope you know what it is. When you install TalkUs, we create a new channel called TalkUs Support that will where we put all new and open tickets. And on the right, so for now there are 1 ticket. Okay. On the right, we have a website that uses TalkUs, or perhaps one day they will use TalkUs. We display a button on the bottom right, so you can engage in discussion with the support team. So you see first who is available to support you. You have a FAQ, and you can start talking. So when you say hello, it creates a new ticket on the left, right in Slack, where we see the message and where the message comes from, the language of the user, and so on. And when we click on the link, you go in the dedicated channel, so you can talk to this user in private. So you have visitor information, where you see where the user is from, the weather, the local time, and so on. And you can also extend this with your own data to see exactly who is the user who is talking to you. So now we can talk in real time thanks to WebSocket, DDP, and so on. If you close the widget, there's also a notification. You saw on the left that the users have left the chat, so if we talk, the user will see a notification to know that new message is waiting to be written. And you can do some cool things too. You can create your own commands that will be connected to your backend. So, for example, here we have a command system. So you can add your own command. Let's try. So we can create a new command called Meteor. And we can choose between post a message to the users or execute a server command to your backend or a client command. Let's try a command. So it's a JavaScript that will be executed to the visitor's browser. So if we do something like that, location equal http meteor.com. So you can write anything you want. So I just added a new command here. And so now if I type the command in Meteor, it will be executed in the browser user. So let's try. Okay, so in this case, it will redirect automatically to the URL we provide. So it can be useful to, for example, add some commands to move the user on a specific page. For example, if the user does not know how to change the settings or something, or if it doesn't find a specific page, it's quite useful. You can also do things like take a screenshot of the widget. So you'll be able to see exactly what the user sees. So we take a screenshot on the browser, upload it on the server, then upload it to Slack, and then we should be able to see it in Slack. Oh yes, we lose the button. The widget has to be open, of course, to execute the command. Let's try again. Okay, so here we have the screenshot right so in Slack. The visitor also sees the screenshot, and since it's in Slack, you can also use all the features of Slack. So, for example, you can comment this screenshot, or you can share it to another people or in your team, or so on. When the chat is over, you can close the ticket with a dot command, and in the support channel, we see that the ticket disappears. So in fact, we don't use the channel like a normal channel. We use it like an email inbox, you know. So if the channel is empty, it means that you have no support to do, and it's okay. You can go back to work. We have also some features like FAQ, so you can create new question, search for question, and have the answer directly in Slack in the widget. Or what's new? It's the features we use to push new information, new things you put in your tool, so you don't have to spam your users with emails. They will see them directly with the notifications in the button. You can also connect your phone. We use AirCall. So in this case, you'll have all the phone call right in Slack, so you know who is calling you, when, and if you are not here to answer, we upload the voicemail directly in Slack, so you can listen the voicemail and then call back with the integration with AirCall, or just answer them here, and in this case it will send an email, and so you can talk by email or with live chat. Okay, so live chat is also, we have a live chat that also email, so in this case, there's an example in French, sorry, by email, so it's like Zendesk, so you can, for example, link your contact at yourcompany.com, so all email will go also in Slack, and when you answer in Slack, it will send an email like this one, and so user can join the live chat or just reply to the email, and again, it will go to your Slack. So the goal is to be able for the support team to do everything in Slack without leaving Slack, and for your user to be where they want by on their email or in live chat or whatever. I think there's a lot of more features, but for the demo, I think it's okay. Voilà, it's Turkus.
Thank you.
So, if you have question, you can try to connect to turkus.io. It could be fun to click on the link and ask your question and write in Slack, so we can see how it works. Question?
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That was an awesome demo. Any questions from the crowd here?
Yeah.
How did you build the widget in the browser? Is that a Chrome extension or something?
So the question was, how did you build a widget, and was it using, because it was Chrome, was it a Chrome extension?
Yes. In this case, it's just a bookmark for the demo, but in the real life, we just do something like that. You just copy a small HTML script that you put on your website, okay? And this script will load a JavaScript static code that is hosted on Amazon. And when you click on it, we open an iframe that loads the Meteor application in this iframe. That's why it's not very fast. We have to optimize the loading. So the cool thing is that we don't have to load the Meteor each time we display the widget, because we have a lot of views, and it could be very CPU intensive to display, to call Meteor each time we want to do that. So no, it's not a Chrome extension. It's just a widget that we inject the code.
Sure.
Oh, so Atmosphere has already incorporated you guys.
No. Soon, perhaps. It's just a demo. We can take every website we want and click to and push the button in the website.
And does it authenticate? Do you have to identify yourself if it's like when you just do it the first time? I missed that part.
I guess the question was, do you authenticate who the...
Identify yourself. Like if that widget is included, when I show up, do I have to type in myself to say I am this person?
Okay.
Or
By default, you are anonymous, so there's no notification. We just display, thanks to the IP, your location and so on. But you can extend the system and identify the users, so you can give his name, email, or whatever you want. So in this case, you'll see all the information in your ticket. For example, this one are anonymous users, so we generate some random name. But if you give us, for example, the real name, we display the real name and all information, so you can know who is talking and so on.
One last question, Dan?
Have you looked at using DDP instead of iframing the entire Meteor app?
The question is, have you looked at using DDP instead of iframing the Meteor?
DDP client more specifically. There's a client called Asteroid, which presumably could just include from the bookmark, so we don't have to load the entire app. Or maybe do it that way already.
Yep. For now, since we started only a few months ago, we've done the simplest way, but it's something we want to do to be able to just do a DDP connection to the backend, and so we don't have to load everything. But we just have to prioritize and do. First, we start to do things that people want, our users want. They never told us it's too slow to start, so it's not something we worked on. We prefer to add new features, but. Definitely later we add these sort of things to accelerate the loading page and loading time and remove. We can remove all the iframes if we want. Just question of time and.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, guys, for making the trip, and give a final hand to the brothers from Paris.
Thank you.
And with that, thanks for bearing with us. I know tonight was an extra long Meteor night. I hope it was worth your time. And if you could, just follow us on Meetup if you want to be notified of our next and upcoming events. Meetup-SF Bay is the right way to stay in touch with us. And if you could help us also by just picking up a piece of trash or a beer bottle and just disposing it on your way out, that'd really help us. And some of us will probably still hang around if you want to come hang out with us and ask more questions. Thanks, and hopefully see you next month.